Today, in current events from a Christian perspective, universities across America are full now of students that hate America and Israel and Jews and probably much, much more than that. They've set up camps in the courtyards and quads of these universities and even taken over meeting halls. And in response, the Republican-led House of Representatives drafted a bill that on its face appears to outlaw the Bible. All this and more today. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. I'm your host, Matt Odegaard, as always, and I really appreciate you stopping by today. This is a labor of love, and I want to help you understand current events from a Christian perspective so that you can live out your faith. If this is helpful to you, hit the like, the subscribe, leave a 5-star review, share this with a friend, leave a comment on the YouTubes, if I'm still up on the YouTubes, who knows at this point, and support at churchpublic.com/support so that I can bring this message to more people because, man, people really need Jesus in this day and age. Again, like if you agree with that. All right, let's talk about some news today, and I'm gonna do my best. I mean, there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of news out there in the reporting of all of this college protest shenanigans that is going on. I'm not going to get deep into all of the ins and outs of it, but I want to hit it from a Christian perspective because there's some Christian perspective things that are going on here that I haven't seen very much reporting on in the news, and I think it's important to understand so that we can understand what's really going on here. Yes, all of this is a Marxist culmination of a government education that just hates America, hates colonization, hates the West, hates white people, hates Christians, which we've talked about over and over again. Go back in the archives, listen to any of the critical race theory episodes. It's all coming through the government education, culminating in these college education pieces, and now we see them culminating in these protests against Jews, and because they feel like the Jews are responsible for the Palestine conflict in Gaza and all this other stuff. And again, I'm not going to get too much into that. It's a very complicated issue. Actually, it's not that complicated, but I don't want to spend too much time on that. What I do want to spend time on is the protests at the college, and I want to point to the fact that some of this is religious in nature. Some of it is religious in nature, and the people don't even understand what they're doing and what they're protesting. We talked about that the other day because that poor lady, well, let's just show her again.
I honestly don't know all of what NYU's doing.
Is there something that NYU's doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure.
She doesn't even know. And that's emblematic. I saw many such clips. That happened to be the most famous one that I particularly saw, and it was going around and around the interwebs for a few days. But there were a bunch. I saw a guy going around at, I want to say UCLA, might have been UC Irvine. At any rate, he was asking, like, why are you protesting? And person to person, they learned from this one and said, I'm not allowed to comment on why we're protesting. So the protesters who are protesting aren't allowed to comment on why they're protesting. See, none of this makes any sense if you think of it in terms of a logical expression, because it's not. It's not logical. It doesn't come out of logic. It doesn't come out of reason. Yes, I know you're sitting there going, like I remember when going to college was about learning and critical thinking. It's not that anymore. It's not about that at all. It's about going there to be indoctrinated in the woke mind virus that acts like a religion and shows up in places where you're all over the campus with tents saying things like they're saying here. And again, if you're just listening on the audio, I love you. If you want to move over to the video side and go to YouTube's, or if it's not there, I'll put it on Rumble if YouTube hates me. And so you have tent cities, and they're taking over the quads and doing all these things, and they're doing all these protests. Now, here's a piece that I saw at several campuses across America that I didn't see a lot of coverage in any news outlet on. Yes, you can find them on Twitter, now called X. I'm gonna have trouble, switching over for my whole life. But anyway, but these, I'm just gonna show you. I think I've got like 3 queued up here. So yes, there are these protests going on. Yes, these protesters hate the Jews, but they also hate America. They hate Christians. They hate white people. They hate anything, because this is all an oppressor-oppressed matrix. Again, if you have questions about this, go back and listen to my critical race theories. Look in the archives and search for those. It's all about who has the power, who doesn't have the power, or even if you don't actually have power, it doesn't matter, because if you're perceived to have power, then you're the baddie. And white people have been the baddie for a long time. Western civilization has been the baddie for a long time. Now, because Jews have a democracy, Israel has a democracy in Israel, the country, they are also the baddie, even though, like, I don't know how you could classify Israel as white. Again, look up World War II, but listen, none of this makes sense. It doesn't have to make sense. It only makes sense if you just hate people. This is all about hate. This whole thing is all about hating people that you just don't like. And you want power, so you have to make the people that already have the power feel bad about having the power, even if you also have the power, which, again, flashing back to this protest sign, and if you've been watching this issue at all, you know that not only are the campuses, mostly, other than in Texas, saying, fine, do whatever you want, many of the professors and administrators from the campus are joining in these protests. So who has the power here? The colleges where the protesters and the professors and the campus administrators are joining in the protest, or the people that they're protesting against who are getting beat up and such? I'll let you answer that. Okay, so all of that is the background to the clips that I want to show you that are not actually about the protest. What I saw on several campuses, and I'll just put it up while I'm talking. So if you're just listening, I've actually taken out most of the sound on this because I don't want to hear it and I don't need to hear it. And if you want to hear it, you can go to the interwebs and find these. This first one that you're looking at is, I believe, UC Irvine. Yeah, this one's UC Irvine. And if you're just listening, what you're seeing is a bunch of students praying Muslim prayers. Yes, you heard that right. I guess they're converting to Islam. I don't know. We're going to talk more about Islam in a moment, but they're standing in the quad and doing prayers. They're bowing down, they're facing Mecca, they're doing all the Muslim things. If you are not familiar with the Nation of Islam and the religion, I'm not going to get too far into it, but just understand that this is what you have to do. You have to bow down several times a day. You have to face towards Mecca. You have to have your prayer shawl. And again, I've muted it, but this person is calling out the prayers. He's actually praying in Arabic. And as you'll see, let's do another one. Here's UCSD. Similar. You have a bunch of people on the quad. I've actually been to UCSD. I didn't attend there, but I've been there, and I've been on this quad. And they're standing there and, again, praying Muslim prayers in Arabic. And you'll see in a minute, I think in this video, there's like some people with a Palestinian flag. They're all wearing the Palestinian scarf that has a name. And they are praying Muslim prayers. Here's another one. That was UC Irvine, UCSD, UCLA. Yes, I know a bunch of these are in California. I saw some at other campuses across America as well, but California, it is what it is. So this one is UCLA. Again, they're on the quad, they're praying. I will point out on this one, if you're just listening, that the first row or first couple of rows, it looks like, are men. The second row or couple of rows are women. And we'll just pause there and say, if you are unfamiliar with the religion, the Muslim religion, the Nation of Islam, you're not allowed to have co-ed prayers. That is absolutely not allowed. And actually, in these videos, there's a lot of things that are going on that are not allowed at all. I'm sorry I'm laughing, but this is what's wacky to me. Like the people that have apparently suddenly turned Muslim or converted to Islam, they have not had the primer on what it means to follow Allah. The women in this quad praying, again, I'll just kind of flip back to that. I cannot imagine they actually understand what they're signing up for because, again, not to get too deep into it, but just look up Sharia law. Look up the rules for Sharia law. I've covered this on other podcasts. I'm not going to get deep into it right now, but if you're unfamiliar with the caliphate, Sharia law, the things that you have to do, it's not an option, have to do if you follow Muhammad and are in the Nation of Islam, they're not optional. You don't get to choose to be a woman and be an empowered feminist woman that's, strong and mighty. That's not an option in this at all. There is no option in that at all. The funny thing to me, the ironic thing to me, I guess, is that Christians are consistently called by the left and those protesting here, terrible, and that we're going to enslave all the women and create a Handmaid's Tale, as it were. Again, ironic to me that this is the religion instead that they grab onto. Again, do a little bit of research on what it means to be a woman in the Nation of Islam, and you may have a different opinion on that. Hey, and listen, I'll give you this: Islam, the word in Arabic means submission. There's a bunch of different forms of Islam. Asalam. Again, I'm not going to get into Arabic right now and all of that, but just know in most of the definitions and the way kind of the letters in Arabic move around and different words, different sounds make different words, they're all somewhat connected to this idea of submission. You submit to God in Islam. Like Allah is very different from the God of the Bible. It's completely different. Allah demands your submission. He is one. He demands it, and it's absolute. He is the conquering emperor. So, and he is the God in that sense. And I know you hear like, oh God, all gods are the same. So first of all, they're not. and even before that, obviously Allah is not a real God. He's a false God. But I'm going to get destroyed on the internets for this. Anyway, I got to say the true things. You can hate me, true things. So Allah is the conquering emperor. And here's the difference here's a difference between Islam and Christianity, right? In the Nation of Islam, you sacrifice yourself for Allah. You give up your life for him, not him for you. And I know you'll say, well, in Christianity, don't you deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me like Jesus says? Yes, that's true. But you do that in order, as Jesus also says, to have an abundant life, and you have life in Christ. Man, I'm reading through Ephesians and another one of my study groups. And in Ephesians, the first 3 chapters is all about Christ in me. The fact that through this mystical union, Christ is in you, and then you have access to the Father and the Father's power through the Holy Spirit and the fruit of the Spirit that come out of that. That is very different from you sacrificing yourself, your literal life. You give up for Allah, and he wants to take it, and basically you get nothing in return. Maybe if you do all the things right, you get some afterlife things. I'm not going to get into all of that. You can look up the Nation of Islam if you want, but I'm not going to get into all of that right now. I've already talked too long about it. But what I want to point to on these campuses is it's important to understand that these poor students, and in one sense, they have to take responsibility for themselves, but in the next sense, they just clearly don't understand anything about what's going on. This lady, again, let's see, where'd she go? Here we go.
I honestly don't know all of what NYU's doing.
Is there some
that just seems to be the resounding thing of what's going on here. These poor kids have no idea what in the world they're doing. They would not last a moment in any of the Islamic countries, the Arabic countries that follow Allah, that are actually, they practice Sharia, and then it's not even getting into like Sunni or Shiite Muslims. Anyway, I'm not going to get into all that. There's a lot of distinctions, but it's suffice to say, like, these poor people, especially the women, have no idea what it means to be a Muslim. But apparently on the college campuses, they're praying to Allah anyway. Now, here's where we get to the weird thing Republicans did, and it's let's just talk about this. So, in response to all of this anti-Semitism on campus, and listen, I need to say, out loud, straight out. I know you know this about me, but I just want to say out loud, it is not okay to hate anyone at all. In fact, Jesus tells us to love our enemies, pray for those who persecute you. Now, you don't have to like it, obviously, when someone is persecuting you, but hating people is just always wrong. Partiality in God's kingdom is just always wrong. So this anti-Semitism, where you're just judging people, hating people based on their race, is obviously wrong. This going on across campuses across America is just wrong and terrible in the whole. It's just bad all together. So it's bad. Yes. Republicans decided to do something about this, which I guess is nice on the one hand. However, what they decided to do was sponsor a bill that would outlaw hate speech more or less. And so here are more details. I've got this picture for you. It's House Bill 6090. I'm going to put this up for you here. Here you go. So So this is 6090 House Bill. I'll read a little bit of it for you so that you understand. This is a bill from the United States House of Representatives. It passed overwhelmingly. I'll give you the numbers that it passed by in a moment. And it's known as this Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. It's going to the Senate. It requires the Department of Education to apply a definition of anti-Semitism and instructs the Department of Education to take action against persons, protesters or otherwise, who make anti-Semitic charges. So we don't exactly know what the punishment levels of this are. However, it's just not good. It passed by overwhelming majority. And listen, I guess, again, I can understand that. As I mentioned, anti-Semitism is just bad. Everyone with a functioning moral conscience compass, they know you don't judge someone based on their skin color or their ethnicity. You just don't. Even in terms of Paul in Galatians, right? We're all the same at the foot of the cross for salvation, and neither slave nor free nor Greek nor Jew or Gentile. Like we're all the same at the foot of the cross. Yes, that's true. And you especially should not wish death upon them or anyone for just being a certain race, which are the chants that these college kids are doing, sometimes in English, sometimes in Arabic. And that's what we're seeing on college campuses around America. Their chants of death to the Jews. They're also saying death to America, which is just terrible. But it also reminds me, as I showed you the prayers, these people just don't know what in the world they're doing.
I honestly don't know.
They have no idea what they're protesting. They just hate things. They've been brought up through their whole life, through their whole government education, to just hate things, including white people and Christians and Westerners and now Jews. So, and they're chanting things too. You've heard these, like from the river to the sea. And that means death to the Jews. It means from the river to the sea, everyone in that area that's not a Jew gets to live. Everyone in that area that is a Jew does not get to live anymore. So believers know this is just bad, and we shouldn't hate anyone, and we most certainly shouldn't call for their death. But this bill, unfortunately, is just going to do so much more, and that's where the problem is. And I feel like the authors of this bill were short-sighted, even if, and giving them the benefit of the doubt, the Republicans who authored this bill, signed this bill, voted for this bill, don't want to stop free speech and don't want to punish Christians, and we'll talk more about what's in the bill in a moment. They just don't understand that this is going to be used as a weapon against us. It's going to be used as a weapon against Christians, and I'll tell you more about some of the language in it in a moment. But here's the problem. This bill does not specifically define what anti-Semitism is, and that's a problem. This culture can't even define what a woman is. And now you're going to define what anti-Semitism is. You may even understand the words anti and Semitism, right? Anti against Semitism is just care for the Jewish people. So anti is hating Jews or being against Jews. It's just a simple word. And again, say it for the thousandth time, Christian worldview, this is bad. We need to love our neighbor. We need to even love and pray for our enemies. But here's where it gets a little problematic. In this bill, here we go. Let's put this up again for you. HR 6090. If you love people but don't agree with them, and you don't agree with every action the modern nation of Israel is doing, are you then anti-Semitic, or are you just prudent? This bill says you are the former, and there's no way to prove that you're the latter. It says. Section 4, number 2 includes the contemporary examples of anti-Semitism identified in the IHRA definition. The IHRA definition includes things like using symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism, whatever that means. Again, what is a woman? Nobody knows, apparently. And e.g., I'm reading from this bill, this is reading from the IHRA definition, which this bill puts as the definition of anti-Semitism. It says, e.g., claims of the Jews killing Jesus. So this is where biblical believers in the Bible, believers that want to use the Bible, this becomes a problem. This becomes a problem because there are a ton of verses that say things like the Jews killed Jesus. Now, No one, and I mean no one believes the modern day Jews killed Jesus, because you're not going to take a time machine and travel back 2,000 years in history. Like, no one believes that's true. But clearly, from a Christian worldview, the Jews handed Jesus over to the Roman authorities, Pontius Pilate, etc., and then the Romans crucified Jesus. The Romans even gave the Jews that were standing there a chance to say, hey, who would you like to let go, and who would you like us to crucify? And they said, here's the murderer and infidel Barabbas, and here's Jesus, who by all accounts I can't really find that he did anything wrong. And they're like, give us Barabbas, just kill Jesus, crucify him. You know this story if you've read any of the Gospels. So does that mean reading the Gospels is against the law? Not necessarily, but it also leaves room for people to weaponize that and say, if you read the Bible, well, now you're against this bill. So then what? What is the punishment? We don't know. That's the problem. And it is kind of a big problem. It opens a big door for freedom of speech, or for just saying, hey, I don't agree with what a certain nation is doing. And the problem is this IHRA, International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, is functioning outside of the American government. So that it is functioning outside of the American government, that means the American government doesn't have even control over what anti-Semitism by definition is. Here's what they say, quote, anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews, rhetorical, physical manifestations of anti-Semitism as directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and their property, towards Jewish community, institutions, and religious facilities. So this is a very fuzzy definition. So here's the first part of it. What is a certain perception? What is a perception? I don't know. Who decides what a perception is? This is there may be a certain perception, and that's anti-Semitism. There may be a certain perception. That is very fuzzy language. So is it real, or is it maybe? We don't know. The definition continues. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism directed towards Jewish or, hear this, non-Jewish. So, so anti-Semitism is against Jewish or non-Jewish people. I'm going out on a limb here, people. I think that means everybody, like they're Jewish or not Jewish. Is that everybody on earth? Like, I don't know where this is going, but this is not a very specific definition. And then towards Jewish community, institutions, and religious facilities. So a famous, influential Jewish intellectual, Yoram Hazony, he said to this in a tweet, quote, anything that relies on the confused IHRA definition of anti-Semitism is a problem. Yes, I would agree with that. So this International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance statement, IHRA, comes with illustrations, as I mentioned, using symbols and images associated with with classic anti-Semitism claims of Jews killing Jesus. So this is what I talked about before. It's a problem for Christians. It's a problem for believers. It's a central part of the biblical narrative that the Jewish leaders in the day did hand over Jesus. This is just historical record, handed over Jesus to the Romans who crucified him. So reading Gospel of John, reading parts of Acts, reading some of Paul's letters would all be, according to this, anti-Semitic, which then at some point apparently would be punishable, which again is very problematic. So did the Republicans mean what they meant when proposing this bill? Again, giving them benefit of the doubt. I hope not, but this will be used by the left to root out Christianity because they hate Christianity. That's where we started with. That's why I showed you this from the Christian perspective, that people, students at college campuses are apparently converting to the Nation of Islam and bowing down in Arabic prayers on their campuses. They hate Christianity. They're going to try in whatever way they can to protest, to persecute Christianity. And this is, here's something in this bill that is hard for people to understand, and that is the First Amendment. And I don't know why it's so hard for people to understand, but we have to understand it. And that is that the First Amendment protects speech that you don't like. And you're going to be like, well, no, it just protects speech like that you can say. No, the First Amendment protects speech that you don't like. And people don't like to hear this. Even hate speech. As long as it's not literally calling for violence, like the death of a certain person, that's bad and that is an actual threat, which the criminal code would step in and do something about. No, it protects speech that is hateful. Because, listen, you know this. Anyone is fine with speech that you like. You'd be fine if someone said, I love you, butterflies are great, I love the ocean. Everybody loves speech that you like. The problem comes in speech that you don't like. How do you decide what can be said and what cannot be said? The First Amendment protects the speech, even if, and maybe especially if, you don't like it. Now, again, to say very clearly, the First Amendment does not protect violence or other criminal actions, which is why there are criminal codes that connect past the First Amendment, that if you make threats or do violent things, that's criminal and you can't do that. So for Christians, the bottom line is this. The understanding that an anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic act is horrible, yes, it is. And we need to confront it at any place. And we need to name it and we need to call it out, because hatred of the Jewish people or any people is bad. The problem is when you don't take action and the speech moves into threats and actual hatred or attacks of people, that we're not talking about speech anymore. We're talking about the legal basis in criminal law. This then brings us to the left's problem. They really want a life struggle that gives them meaning. They really want to struggle. They want something to fight against. And we see that over and over and over again. But they keep picking things that are just not winners. And this is just not a winner. They want to be a hero. They want to be maybe even a martyr. But they don't want to go through all the hard work of being, well, heroic. Anyone who is familiar with the trials of Hercules knows, even if you watched the Disney animation years and years ago, you know that Hercules had to go through all of these trials to become the hero that he was destined to be. These people want to be heroes without going through any trials at all, because being a hero is hard work. And they do funny things where they where they pretend to do heroic things. They pretend to do things that they're martyred for, only they just really aren't things. Whether it's gluing yourself to a painting for climate change or throwing soup on a painting for climate change, they're just LARPing. They're just live action role playing these not real martyr things. They just want to pretend to be persecuted. They want to pretend to be martyred, and yet they aren't really doing it. They don't really have any skin in the game. And the thing about this is, it's not new at all. G.K. Chesterton talked about this 100 years ago, in an essay titled The Modern Martyr. And he talks about a group of women who, quote, chain themselves with iron chains to the railings of Downing Street in a good, ironical allegory of modern martyrdom. It generally consists of a man chaining himself up and then complaining he is not free. Did you hear that, right? So you chain yourself to a wall and then say, man, it's really terrible that I'm not free. This is the modern martyrdom, like gluing yourself to a painting and then saying, this is so terrible, I can't believe I'm glued to a painting. It's just ridiculous LARPing, but that's what they do. Or perhaps it's a woman camping in the quad, then asking for food.
That there was a request that food and water be brought in, unless I misunderstood.
To allow it to be brought in, I mean, well, I guess it's ultimately a question of what kind of community and obligation Columbia feels it has to its students. Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill, even if they disagree with you? If the answer is no, then you should allow basic, I mean, it's crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like
basic humanitarian aid because you locked yourself in a room and now you're thirsty. This is it's play fighting martyrs and not real. Chesterton, again quoting, modern people think that anyone who makes himself slightly uncomfortable in public will immediately be uproariously popular, end quote. These people want the fame of being a martyr without actually having to die. And they think that's going to give them celebrity or prosperity or something. And again, many of them have no idea why they're protesting.
I honestly don't know all of what NYU's doing.
These kids are ready to protest to the death as long as you respect their banana allergy. This was a poor lady who protested in the liberated zone at UCLA with a potentially fatal banana allergy. Counter-protesters, I'm just reading the tweet here, Counter-protesters invaded the encampment and saw the no banana warning. The next day they came back waving bananas like settlers, waving machine guns and smeared bananas everywhere. Oh, those dastardly bananas. Play fighting martyrs. It's ridiculous. All of this, of course, is different from actual martyrs. And speaking from a Christian worldview, Christian martyrs who actually died for what they believed. The biggest part of this to note is Christian martyrs did not have a choice about being killed. Sure, they had a choice about believing in Jesus, but beyond that, they did not have a choice at all about what the persecutors did to them. They wanted to be free to worship Jesus, and the powers that be said no. This is a far cry from these live-action role players who are praying words they don't know in Arabic to a God they don't understand, and all the while, all they have to do to stop is go home. No one will follow them. No one will show up at their door demanding they recant Allah, at least not here on the college campuses of America. Chesterton again, quote, "Pagans were not impressed by the torture of Christians merely because it showed they honestly held their opinion. They knew millions of people honestly held all kinds of opinions. The point of such extreme martyrdom is much more subtle. It is, hear this, that it gives the appearance of a man having something quite special backing him up, of his drawing upon some power. If men smiled and sang, as the Christians did, while they were being boiled or torn to pieces, the spectators felt the presence of something more than mental honesty. They felt the presence of some new and unintelligible kind of pleasure, which presumably came from somewhere." The pagan said, "If Christianity makes a man happy while his legs are being eaten by a lion, might it not make me happy while my legs are still attached to me walking down the street? St. Peter was crucified upside down is a huge inhuman joke, but his human seriousness survived the inhuman joke because, in whatever posture, he died for his faith. The modern martyr is like St. Peter, who should deliberately stand on his head for 10 seconds and then expect to be canonized for it." End quote. So, all in all, this college protest can only last for so long. As frustrating as it is to watch and as illuminating of the government school system's irreconcilable decay it is to me, these LARPers will just decide one day to go home, and after that, well, no one will care. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Thanks again for stopping by. I really appreciate you. This is just it's an act of love for you to grow closer to Jesus. I hope that you can find a little bit of joy and humor in the weird things that are going on around the world. I hope that you can follow after Jesus and that you will keep the faith. See you next time.